I spent my weekend poring over a research paper that studied over 8,000 couples, and this paper discovered something that changes how I think about relationships and how I provide couples therapy in Los Angeles and West Hollywood. The data shows that relationships tend to cluster into 7 types of relationships, and you can place those on a spectrum with the happiest at one end and the most struggling at the other. It's a framework that I'm calling couples. The most uncomfortable part is that 40% of couples fall into one of these types, and spoiler alert, it is not the category at the happy end of the spectrum. But this video is not going to be about whether your relationship is good or bad. It's about helping you identify which category of the couples framework you're in, and then helping you understand which of the 4 pillars of relationship success are holding it up and which ones might be cracking. These 4 pillars are communication, affection or emotional intimacy, how you resolve conflict resolution, and balance or equilibrium. So in this video, I'm going to run through each of these 7 categories of relationships. And if you're brave enough, feel free to tell me which one sounds the most like you in the comments below, because knowing your type isn't a criticism or a judgment. It's actually a way to help you identify which area of your relationship you need to work on the most. Now, if we've not met before, my name is Oliver and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist here in Los Angeles. My office is right in the middle of West Hollywood. I've been helping couples grow great relationships for close to a decade, and I love working to help people grow greater relationships. If you want to go deeper into this, stick around to the end, because I'll show you how to take the care and intimacy quiz, and it's a way for you to get your relationship health score. It's different from the research paper, but you'll still get a lot out of it. Let's start with the goal, the happy end of the spectrum that shows us a thriving marriage. These couples are firing on all cylinders. High satisfaction in communication, great conflict resolution skills, deep layers of intimacy and affection, and their equilibrium scores suggest they're on the same page about money, parenting, extended family values. These couples are genuinely held together by the relationship itself. Lots of love, lots of affection. Now, these couples tend to be older, married for longer, and more economically stable. Now, interestingly enough, they're also more likely to be in their first marriage. And another layer to this is quite fascinating. They're more likely to have both parents who didn't get divorced. So perhaps they had a working model for what a marriage looks like. We can't really tell from the numbers, it's just a theory. So a couple like this isn't really going to come to therapy, but if they were, it wouldn't be because of anything between them. It might be to help them navigate a big life transition, or something acute has happened like a health crisis or traumatic event and they need some support around it. But more likely than not, they're going to have the resources to manage this by themselves. Only 9% of couples in this research out of the 8,000 fell into the Soaring category. But even within that 9%, nearly 1 in 4 of them still reported that at some point they'd considered getting a divorce. So even in the most healthiest of marriages, the thought still crosses people's minds. It's not an indicator of anything. So if Soaring is the gold standard, what does everyone else look like? Well, as we work through the other 6 types, you're going to see that what holds a marriage together varies wildly. And for most couples, it's not the relationship itself. Let me show you what I mean. So the 6th type is embracing. This is fascinating because the relationship is actually working really well. The couple genuinely like each other, lots of high scores in emotional intimacy, great sex, they're best friends and lovers, which is rarer than you would think. So this is what their care profile looks like: mid to high in communication, high affection, lots of good conflict resolution skills, but equilibrium is low. The strain shows up in equilibrium, which is everything, because it causes an imbalance. Different opinions on family, friends, boundaries, perhaps disagreements about values and religion. But this embracing category of couples got grouped together specifically because of an imbalance around children and parenting. Now, I assumed this was about a difference in parenting styles. I'm a family therapist and I've seen a lot of that, but it's actually something more unique. And it's a couple who actually resents the intrusion of their children into their relationship. So these couples are quite rare, a little self-centered, which sounds harsh, but they prioritize the couple bubble over the family unit. it seems that the kids feel like a burden. The parenting role feels like a chore that pulls them away from what they actually enjoy, which is being with each other. If this category of couple walks into my office, it's rarely because the marriage is in crisis. It'll be for family therapy because one of the kids is having problems. And I would suspect that that kid is acting out, doing drugs, hanging out with the wrong crowd, or all three. And that's because the parents have probably let their child run wild as they focus on themselves. There's no oversight on teens or tweens, and that's just what happens. The couple's strength is each other, but their challenge is expanding that warmth to include kids without losing what they have. You can't stay in the couple bubble forever when you've got a family to raise. So what I want you to notice as we move through these types is the pattern emerging. Each type has a specific profile, and it shows where things are working and where things are not. So the next type has a weak spot that is pretty unique too. It's called the leaky pipe, the leveled category. This also makes up about 8% of couples. And honestly, this is the type I want more people to hear about because it challenges the idea that any struggle means that your relationship is broken. These couples are pretty solid. They communicate well, they enjoy spending time together, they're aligned on parenting, great emotional intimacy. Like the foundation of this relationship is strong, as you can see in their profile. But you will notice that there is a dip in conflict resolution, and it is a super specific dip. They handle most disagreements well, except when it comes to money. Financial management is the one consistent area where they fight, avoid, or fumble. Other than that, it's a relatively healthy relationship. And one growth area doesn't make a bad relationship or mean there's cause for divorce, but it does mean it's a very specific weak spot that needs to be focused on. So this is a couple that doesn't usually need long-term therapy. They need targeted skill building around money conversations. And one of the couple's intensive packages that I offer is going to be perfect for this couple. We will spend our time co-creating some frameworks for how to talk about finances to ensure that it doesn't always turn into a fight. And I'm saying that because despite it being relatively okay in all other areas, this type of couple actually considers divorce more frequently than the other types. So why would a functional couple who only really fight about money think about divorce more than a couple that's struggling in all other areas? Well, I think that's because this is a chronic, unresolved issue that stands out and it comes up over and over again, every payday at the end of the month when rent is due, for example. So this one leaky pipe is a massive source of contention and they can't fix it or heal it alone. And that's where couples therapy is going to come in really handy. It's going to be targeted around one specific area. Now we're going to cross the line into a different territory. So the next 4 types of relationships have more than one leaky pipe, and some of them are really struggling. So the first 3 types we looked at are all held together by the relationship itself. For the most part, the people in these relationships are friends. They have good emotional intimacy. They genuinely enjoy each other. This next category, the planted couple in my framework, make up about 10% of couples, and they sit in this very interesting middle ground between thriving and struggling. This is what their care profile looks like. Poor communication skills, poor emotional intimacy skills, not very good at resolving conflict, but a very high equilibrium score. Now, a high equilibrium score could mean that both partners feel things are nicely balanced, like they take turns cooking dinner and the person that didn't cook cleans up. That is one explanation for a high score here. But it could also mean that there are really big differences in the way roles are divided or shared, and they don't disagree about it. So think about that 1950s heterosexual couple living in suburbia. The husband is the breadwinner, the wife's the homemaker, and both of them are okay with that. And today we would think that that might be very imbalanced. So these couples are likely to have deep roots extended in family, community, or faith. Their identity is embedded in being good church members or solid pillars of their social world. The marriage serves as a social function. Partners often feel more like co-managers of a life rather than anything romantic, and they're fitting into the roles, and those roles are 100% aligned with their values. Despite the internal disconnection, these couples are remarkably stable. They consider divorce much less frequently because something works for each of them. And it's not deep emotional joy, it's more likely the context. They both want a family or they both want to be seen a certain way by their church or community. I think of political couples when I think of this type. These are all real strengths for every couple, but there's something sad about this relationship. It might feel empty or lacking soul. If this couple were to come to therapy with me, I think it's about teaching them communication skills, rebuilding connection, turning them towards each other instead of just standing side by side facing outwards. It's all about emotional intimacy. And that is another type of couples intensive I offer, where we just spend a handful of sessions really focusing on reconnecting. Now, the next few types we're going to look at have even less holding them together internally, and the external structures start to look more like escape routes than a support system. So type 3 is U for uneasy. These are conflicted couples. They make up about 14% of people in this 8,000 survey. At first glance, their profile looks very similar to the one that we just looked at, the planted or traditional couples. Both have strong external lives, but the motivation is different. Previous category of couples are rooted in family and faith because those things genuinely matter to them. It's part of their identity. But couples in this section have built an elaborate external life because it's an escape from each other. Same sort of profile. But what's different is that equilibrium score. For conflicted couples, it's busyness, kids' activities, church committees, social calendars, anything that means that they don't really have to sit in the room alone together. The internal dimensions, personality, compatibility, communication, conflict resolution, intimacy, are all really struggling. They will be engaging in very bitter personal attacks, avoiding issues. They might even fight dirty when they do fight. So it's the sort of couple that live in the same house but kind of only hang out when they accidentally bump into each other in the hallway. The house looks nice from the outside, but inside, I don't know, there's some distance, there's animosity. It doesn't feel like a happy, warm home. The couples like this would be living parallel lives, right? So the external world, all the activities, the jobs, the social functions become the buffer that keeps them together. But if you took that all away, there's not much holding them together. Between 50 and 60% of people in this category consider divorce regularly, and that is significantly higher than the other couples. What keeps them together is not rooted in shared values, it's rooted in avoidance, and avoidance has a shelf life. So if this couple comes to therapy, they often don't frame it as a marriage problem. They might come in because of something with their kids or stress from their busy life or burnout. They'll be blaming other things rather than looking at their relationship and what goes on between them. I have to interrupt the avoidance, turn them back towards each other, sit with that discomfort of actually facing their disconnection rather than running from it. Other couples that we've looked at already have internal strengths to draw on, whereas this sort of couple, we have to start from scratch. It's intensive, it's long-term, and challenging. The final few groups have even less holding them together. There's a financially focused couple that I call the one note, and they make up 11% of couples. When we look at their profile, there's one spike, and that is in the equilibrium section, but specifically about finances. Everything else is in the red. So these couples are great at paying bills. They manage money well. The household runs efficiently. From the outside, everything looks organized and successful. They might even look like they have it all together, more than a lot of the other couples in the thriving categories. But the question that stumps them is when I ask something like, if you lost your financial stability tomorrow, a job loss, a health crisis, a market crash, what would hold you together? And often they don't know. So we're looking at a bit of a one-legged table. Technically it's standing up, but it's one kick away, but it's one nudge from collapsing. These couples have pervasive internal distress because they can't communicate. Their conflict resolution outside of money is weak. They're not particularly compatible. There's no emotional intimacy. It's money holding them together, not love, not friendship. And demographically, these couples tend to be younger. They're often in their earlier, more economically pressured stages of life and marriage. And my theory is that when you're young and building a life together, it's really easy to mistake financial partnership for actual partnership. So this might be a couple who started a business together, but forgot to build the relationship underneath it. Stability-wise, these couples are in trouble, right? They've got very high rates of relationship dissatisfaction and frequently consider divorce because when the one thing that you have going for you hits a rough patch, and money always hits a rough patch, there's very little to fall back on. Couples like this have built their entire relationship identity around money or business or economic advancement. Asking them to be emotionally vulnerable and talk about their feelings is going to be hard. And they might actively resist it because it's not where they feel safe. So again, this is another intensive, long therapy. There's almost nothing to build on except a shared bank account and very challenging work. But there's one more couple that has even less holding them together. The C in the couples framework that stands for cold, and it represents 40% of people in this research. So 4 in 10 couples land in this category. It's the biggest and the most distressed. This is what their care profile looks like, and as you can imagine, it's all low. It's all in the red. So there's no single area of strength to point to. There's very little to build on. When I sit with this sort of couple, there's often a flatness in the room, not necessarily hostility, but absolutely no passion. These are two people that have been drifting apart for years, maybe decades, until the space between them becomes permanent. It's the roommate phase, but on steroids. Over half of these couples have considered divorce. These couples tend to be younger, married for shorter periods, have lower income, and more likely to come from divorced families themselves because they didn't have a model for what a working, healthy relationship is, and their parents are probably divorced too, so the pattern repeats. They're often staying in the relationship because leaving is scarier or harder than staying. And this is a really challenging couple to work with. It really means going back to basics. I'm not working with one individual problem. I'm not working with one area. I have to work with all of these areas. And I've got no reservoir of goodwill, no recent memories of things being good between them. This is just two people who've forgotten why they chose each other in the first place, if they ever really knew. So the work is figuring out if it's still there, if both people are willing to do it, want to do it, and can stick it out because it gets really uncomfortable. That's very intensive long-term therapy with two people who are committed to trying even when it feels helpless. All right, so if this was helpful for you, drop me a comment, hit like, subscribe, share it with a friend if you think that they're in one specific category. If you are in California or Los Angeles in particular and want help understanding your relationship profile, I'll put the link to make a consultation call with me below, and I would love to hear from you.